Suddenly I heard a soft-sounding voice. "Good morning. How are we doing today?" I opened my eyes, and as a consequence my entire vision was wrapped in some sort of blur, so that I couldn't see anything. I tried to perceive something, but couldn't. "Close your eyes. Don't worry. That's absolutely normal in your case." Again I blinked rapidly while being still in shock about what this is right here. Am I dreaming? I asked myself, but no response. My mind felt so foggy that even the easiest thoughts didn't reach through. Again I blinked violently, and this time I could recognize my vicinity, at least to a minor percentage, because beside the picture I assumed to be the reality, there was a huge black spot in my vision. Normally I would have closed my eyes again in certainty that it was a dream, but I felt some kind of pain in my jaw area, so I touched it with my hand. Huh? I expected to feel the soft sensation of touching skin, but there was only some sort of cloth or bandage. Suddenly I detected movement inside the visible 35% of my field of view. After massive efforts, I managed to get a sharp image of that something or someone in front of me. When I looked closer, I saw that it was definitely a person, and it started to move closer towards me. My breath intensified, and right in the moment this person seemed close enough to touch me, I fainted again. "Good morning. How are we doing today?" Wait. I widely opened my eyes and created a sharp picture. "Holy moly, the lights! Turn them off," I ordered, while closing them again immediately. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a piece of cloth moving, which I assumed to be the curtain, also because the brightness dimmed slightly. I gave it another try and opened my eyes a crack. And indeed, I could maintain the view for a couple of seconds before closing them to give them a rest. In the time I looked around me, I saw this figure again, but this time I saw the details of it: a white coat, a pair of glasses, a bright shirt underneath the coat. Well, spontaneously I'd say this is a doctor, I commented mentally. As I moved my head around at a slight angle, I could see where I was laying on, some sort of bed, but that still didn't explain anything. In impatience, I started to wink faintly to this person. When I finally attracted his attention, he turned himself towards me and greeted me kindly. "Oh, you're awake. How are you feeling?" he asked me. Did I have a car crash? Although I never had one, it really felt like that. "You're inside the hospital, Aaron. Don't you remember?" I started getting the shivers as he said that. "What? Where? Why?" I returned his question, still highly perplexed. He sat onto my bed and calmly interacted with me. At first, he introduced himself to me. "Aaron, look, I'm Dr. Bush, your responsible doctor. You've had an accident, don't you remember?" "No, not at all," I replied. He continued, "But everything will be fine, trust me. It looks worse than it actually is." "Well, why am I here then?" I added in curiosity. "Because you have a craniocerebral trauma." "Excuse me, what do I have?" A moderate concussion." I instantaneously touched my head to see if there was any truth to that. But yet again, I felt this bandage covering my skin. I anxiously asked, "What has happened to me?" "Well, during your football match, you were hit by an enemy player right into your facial area. That's at least what my report says about the reason for you being here." As a result, I was absolutely stunned and overwhelmed at the same time. But I asked one more question. "And what happens with me now?" "Well, our task is it to do a computed tomography, which will give us insights on your status." The first tests went fine, but we can only investigate closer when we look into you, he smiled. And when can I go home? I asked in expectation. Suddenly he started to look at me in astonishment and held his breath. I could tell from his reaction that he didn't expect me saying that. Then he turned around once more and said, "Calm down and let your body regenerate. Until then, we will meet more often, I promise." Then he left and I was alone again in this room. Suddenly, my gaze fell onto a little bag laying right beside me. With a faint grip, I searched for what was inside. Except for a card with the best wishes for my team, I found my mobile phone and also my little mojo, which was my little teddy bear that accompanied me since 3rd grade. When I had exams, I always made sure that it was with me, but it obviously worked because I never had to repeat a school year. So I smiled at it while being quite amused, at least for short, for my head was hurting more and more with every movement. To reorganize myself in time and space, I grabbed my phone and looked at the screen. At first, it was hard to focus, but then I eventually saw it. Tuesday, the 18th of October. I couldn't believe it. What the supposed doctor told me appeared to be true. I really was abstinent for 2 days, because the football match I could recall rudimentarily was Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Wow. 2 days, during which I was completely unconscious, almost dead. That frightened me, to be honest. But I just had to believe what this man told me. There's no other option. Afterwards, I put my phone aside. I was still too weak to do anything properly. My body, as well as my mind, still seemed kind of blurred, so I took it as a further indicator for the credibility of the doctor. To follow his advice, I decided to sleep a bit. I never would have thought to say that at 11:30 a.m. But strange circumstances, strange habits, right? Before I closed my eyes for good, though, I found myself occupied with one more thing. When I recall my first look at the doctor, he seemed to be looking at someone, although only me and him were here. Or am I incorrect? Under immense pain, I tilted my head to the right and saw that, indeed, there was a bed in which someone was lying recently. The pillow, the blanket, everything was crumbled, and as a nurse, you don't leave it like that if it is empty. But what am I concerning about? My concerns should rather be linked with getting healthy instead of who is laying inside the bed to my right. Smiling about that absurdity, I finally closed my eyes and returned to the land of dreams. But only for a short time, since a couple of hours later I was visited by someone who woke me up. In the moment I became conscious, I only heard silent voices, but voices I knew. While observing further and not moving a centimeter at all, I could match the voices with people. As I gained clarity over my thoughts, I raised my voice. "Hey there, Mom, Dad." Both were turned away from their silent conversation and looked at me in utter relief. "You're awake," Mother said. Father added, "Gosh, this dude hit you like a sledgehammer." Yeah, I felt it before I saw what it was. Or rather, I didn't feel it at all, because I went straight to the ground. Mother interrupted. "Don't make jokes on that. It could have ended worse, you know." "Well, you're probably right." "That's my son. Back among the living," Father choked, while triggering Mother, who only repeated her sentence from before. Both Father and I started to grin. In my case, it didn't suffice for more. Normally, I think there are no limits, but in this case, we make an exception. I've never felt such a stinging sensation before, but I've never had such an accident either. All in all, it doesn't matter. What happened, happened, and we will have to deal with that, I told my parents as well, still being glad that we could speak with each other. They asked me if they could do anything else for me. Otherwise, they would leave me alone with my neighbor. Before I could ask what they meant with that, they had already disappeared. Man, I hate it when they're mocking me by saying something ambivalent like that. I mean, why would they leave me alone with this neighbor? I haven't even seen him. Or her. I only saw this empty bed. But why do they draw connections where none of them are? Ah, parents. Never mind. Let's go back to sleep. This little conversation made me feel like 2 football matches consecutively.